Hey everybody, Joan Zodianz here and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a birth chart analysis on Elisa Lam. This is my new series called Cosmic Crime, where I'll be investigating people's persona using astrology. So if you're not into astrology, get out of here. But if you are into astrology, hopefully you learned something new. Fortunately, there was a lot of information on her, mostly because her Tumblr is still live, and I watched the new Netflix documentary called the Xoxo Hotel. Not sure if I'm saying that correctly or not. So I got to learn a lot about her life during those last moments, but I wanted to learn more in depth of who she was as a person, which I felt like Netflix didn't really cover. So we're just going to dive into that, but first we're going to learn more about what happened to her, and we'll lead up to the astrological part, okay? So just bear with me. You can make it through this video. So Elisa Lam checked into a hostel called Stay on Main in Los Angeles, California on January 28, 2013, which is part of the Xoxo Hotel, with a different section with different lobbies and entrances. But they actually shared the same elevators. During her stay, she had problems at the hotel with her other roommates, so she was in a room with other people because it's a hostel, and she was leaving behind passive-aggressive post-its and disrupting the staff. So they put her in her own private room, hoping it would resolve the issues. But I honestly feel like it only made her situation more worse because, you know, as we all already know, that she had passed away, so not having anybody there, I'm not trying to put blame on anybody, okay, but not having anybody else there in the room with her made it really difficult for this case to be solved. And that's, I feel personally that's why it took so long to find out where she was. So she was last seen publicly at a bookstore called The Last Bookstore, which to me, that's crazy that it's called that, because it was the last time she was ever seen by anybody. So her family called the LAPD because they actually had a routine call with her while she traveled, and she didn't call them. And so they flew down to help search for her. Then on February 1st, 2013, Elisa Lam, she didn't check out of her room, so they reported her missing. She left behind all of her stuff. According to the website, from what I found on Stay on Main, the checkout time is at 11 a.m. The last video of her, the infamous video, was taken on February 1st, 2013. That's what they say, because everybody's trying to dispute it because you can't see the time, the date on the timestamps of the video. So there's a conspiracy behind it, and people are saying that it was altered by the hotel staff, but I'm not sure about that, okay? I couldn't clarify. And in the video, she's exhibiting a lot of odd behavior, and most likely due to her mental illness because she was diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder. So based on what we know of her not, doing her routine call, her not checking out at 11 a.m. and this last video, if it's accurate, I believe that she passed away either the night before or early that morning. But again, not entirely sure. I couldn't find an actual time of date of when she died. Then on February 19th, a hotel staff member was sent up to check the water tanks because there is multiple complaints about the dirty water and low water pressure. They cover this in Netflix. And she was found deceased and also naked in one of the 4 large tanks, which was the hotel's water supply. So guests were actually bathing, drinking, using the water with her body fluids in it, which to me, I feel like they should have addressed this sooner. I mean, so many days had went by already, so why did it take so long to check it? I mean, that was always curious to me. Maybe it's just neglect from the hotel staff, or maybe it's just because they didn't care. Maybe it's just like a normal thing, maybe. I don't know what it was. I'm not trying to put blame on anybody, but it's just weird, isn't it? When I was doing my online research of what I could find, I saw that her autopsy was actually incomplete. And so they were saying there wasn't enough blood or something from her body it was just moderately decomposed. So they just weren't getting what they needed from her body to make a complete autopsy. But they did say that she wasn't physically attacked, or it didn't seem as if she was, so there were no marks or bruises or anything like that. A toxicology report revealed that she was actually undertaking her medication for depression and bipolar disorder. But to me, if it's an incomplete autopsy, then how accurate is this report? You know what I mean? it's too many holes in this case for me to be factual. So I'm just reporting whatever I find, you guys, because I really don't know if what happened to her was due to her undertaking or overtaking medication. That's all that I'm really saying here. So the death was then listed as an accidental drowning, but you know, everybody has their own conspiracies about what happened. But just to reiterate, this is not that kind of video. I am not trying to build another conspiracy on top of another one. We're just only looking to her persona and how astrology could give us more insights into her energy, her psyche, okay? That's all that we're trying to achieve. What I found was she was born on April 30th, 1991 in Vancouver, Canada. Her birth time is unknown, and she died around February 1st, 2013. Again, this is just my assumption, and this is all that I could find on her birth information. So I could possibly be wrong here, but let me explain how I came to what I'm getting to. Pulled up 3 different birth charts, 6 a.m., 12 p.m., and 6 p.m., just to see what was similar, what was not. And I found that the 6 a.m. one resonated with her personality more, and I'm gonna share reasons and examples of it. But I felt like the 6 a.m. was more on point because it had a lot of things that I felt pertained to her mental illness or challenges that she had as a person. So the differences I found between the charts was the moon signs. It was on a cusp, so it was going from Scorpio to Sagittarius. So 12 p.m. it became Sagittarius, but before then it was in Scorpio. And the houses changed positions, and the MC and the AC also changed as well because of the time. So midheaven and ascendant signs were different. Aside from everything else, the rest of the planets remained the same. And so I chose 6 a.m. because Sun and Mercury is in the 12th house, and there were multiple square aspects with Mercury, which is important. So if we take a look at her chart, and I made this so it's easier for you guys to read, direct. So if it's stationed, it'll be a direct, or it's in a retrograde. That's what the RX is for. And if you can pause this to see what all of this is, because I feel like if I'm reading it all to you, it's gonna make the video longer. We're not gonna do that. I'll get into the major notes or the major placements that I found were very interesting and can give us a little bit more insight into who she was as a person, okay? So I saw the ascendant and the sun were both in Taurus, and the sun is in the 12th house of self-undoing and the 1st house of self. So when we see this combination, right, we see that this person has challenges with identity, their identity, so the identity of self, and there's lots of pressure to be somebody in the outer world, so they don't feel this way about themselves internally. So they're often misunderstood by others because of it. And there's this pressure to conform to society, to conform to norms that they themselves don't agree with. And because Elisa had Taurus placements, I mean, she's naturally going to be very pessimistic of the world, but she's still very highly self-aware because she internalizes a lot of herself. Here's a quote from her where she says, "I suppose that is the human condition, to feel so big, so important, but at the same time to be just a flicker in the universe, and the struggle to come to terms with those two truths." See, so she felt like one person inside and another person on the outside. This was her biggest challenge in life. So her moon is in the 7th house in Scorpio. So Lisa was very sensitive, which she was, and soaked in the energy of others. She had very intense emotions. She internalized a lot of her emotions. Her Tumblr was her outlet. And Scorpio is also known as the psychic zodiac sign. So she was also very intuitive, but it was also hard for her to detach emotionally from others. If we take a look at her Mars, which is in the 3rd house of communication in Cancer, this only heightens her Scorpio moon's desires to hang on, and her emotional intensity, it intensifies basically. She wanted to heal others, sacrificing her own needs, and she often acted on how she felt about things. It would be very difficult for her to not act on these feelings whenever she felt it, and it would be hard for her to hold everything in. She would probably overreact or overwhelm others with her emotions. So there was this constant struggle of trying to hold herself back, and it created a lot of tension in her energy. So in her Tumblr post, it says, "I'm full of emotions, not bad emotions, just I'm apprehensive and on edge about feelings and nervous about my relationships with people. Other people's feelings are highly contagious for me." This is a water sign trait, so mixed with that Scorpio moon and Cancer Mars, it just made that very intense for her. She goes on to talk about how her ex-boyfriend broke up with her, he got back with his ex, that she continued to be his friend and offer him emotional support because he doesn't open up to many people. So she's sacrificing her own happiness to help heal this person emotionally. And then she says in here, just my heart is very open and I'm becoming too attached to people too quickly. And that's because I've been so lonely, I just want to have a connection with anyone. So she's extremely aware of her feelings. She's extremely aware that she needs to have quality over quantity is what she's saying here. But, those water signs will do you in, man. Those water signs will do you in, which is crazy because, how she passed away was also in water. If we look at her Mercury sign, which is an Aries in the 12th house, we see here that it has multiple aspects, square aspects, but also there's a struggle with mental illness is something that we already know about her. But there's also a challenge with releasing thoughts and ideas without conflict with others or with self. And even though she's very optimistic, she still struggles with her own identity. Remember, Aries, their motto is I am, and it's in Mercury. So the challenge for her would be to figure out how to put her life together without sacrificing her independence. And she has this need to be free from others. And we see a lot of that in her Tumblr. That's why she likes to travel so much. She wants to experience life for herself. If we look at her Tumblr, it says, "You write so beautifully. The inside of your mind must be a terrifying place." We also see here if she's an optimist or a pessimist. And she quoted this person. This is a quote from another person, but still it's her sharing something that she relates to, and she's saying that she's more of a pessimist, but she still tries to find the light in the world around her. And this has a lot to do with her Taurus sun being very pessimistic, but also her Scorpio moon of being very dark and internalizing her feelings and being very, I guess, a little sad or morbid about how she feels about things. But her Aries Mercury is going in there and trying to work overtime, trying to help her see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because it's in the 12th house of self-undoing, this is the kind of person where they're constantly going to struggle with their own independence, their own identity as a person. And it creates a lot of challenges for them to see the world more optimistically, because they're always self-reflecting, they're always thinking and overthinking, and maybe even inventing things that are not really real. It's the 12th house of self-sabotage in a way, where this person has to figure out how to overcome themselves. So they are their own worst enemy. And in this case, for Elisa Lam, her thoughts were her own worst enemy. So there's a lot going on with this Aries Mercury. It's heavy in her chart. Looking at her Venus, which is in the 2nd house in Gemini, she was a well-known writer. We know that through Tumblr. She wrote down her observations of people all the time. And she saw people as a way to better understand the world. But again, she had a hard time understanding how she fit into society. So she was always misunderstood. She was always searching for a place to belong, to possess love and social life wherever she traveled. She related to others with their own personal experiences. So she wanted to learn more about them. And most likely she asked a lot of questions. How, why, where, very inquisitive, very curious about others. And what their characters actually possessed. Remember, 2nd house is the house of possessions. And for this case, it was just mental notes of everything and everyone. This is what made her more clever. This is what made her more intelligent. But this is also, maybe unbeknownst to her, made her really happy. In her Tumblr post, she was very descriptive, very detailed about how she went out to the club with her friends, and she noted all of these little observations about people and her insights about people. She was very into watching others and how they operated in the world around her. So this was an interesting blog post that she had up. And in the end, she had fun, and she thought it was a great experience for her. But again, this has a lot to do with her Gemini and Venus, of wanting to have fun with people, but also not being able to help but observe their activities, observe their characters. If we take a look at the square aspect between the Taurus Sun, which is in the 12th and 1st house, and the Leo Jupiter, so the Jupiter's in Leo in the 4th house of home. So this aspect denotes that there's a challenge with this person's fortune, luck, the philosophies of life. There's an extreme pressure to be great. Jupiter is also the planet of travel and greater life experiences. So Lisa was always trying to prove that she could survive her surroundings. Remember, Leo, a fixed fire sign, is a survivalist. All right. And there was a need to control every outcome, to defy her own fate and destiny by doing what others didn't dare to do. This most likely got her into a lot of trouble with others who didn't really understand her need to be more worthy of herself, more worthy of good luck and good fortune. And a lot of times a person with this kind of square will try to go to greater lengths to prove how worthy she is to herself, not necessarily to anybody else, because again, that sun is in the 12th and the 1st house of self and self-awareness. If we look at her Tumblr here, she writes a lot about traveling and wanting to travel. And if you read her Tumblr, if you know her personally, you might already know that she's an avid traveler. She's confirmed a lot of travel plans. Again, that Leo and Jupiter is strong. She wants to prove that she can survive by herself. And she went alone most times as well. And this is also one of those things where she needs to be out there and hunting for the next adventure, hunting for something that makes her feel worthy of herself or worthy of these experiences. Taking a look at her Aries Mercury in the 12th house, which is square with the Cancer Mars in the 3rd house, we see that this aspect tells us that there's a disconnect between her thoughts and her actions. In her head, she's a very optimistic person, but her actions were overwhelming, most likely to other people. It must have been very difficult for her to control her own emotions and her actions, unleashing it with very passive-aggressive ways, as told by the hotel when she was leaving post-its or disrupting other people. There was also a part in the Netflix documentary, if I can remember correctly, where she was at a concert or someplace out, and she made a complaint. I think she wrote something, and they had to remove her because she was being very disruptive. So it took a lot of effort for her not to say anything. She often acted on how she felt. She was very passionate about certain topics, especially things that bothered her emotionally. Must have been very difficult for her sometimes because she could be very aggressive, but again, very passionate, very affectionate, very loving at the same time. She was probably in her head, she was only really trying to help the situation. With that Aries and Mercury, Aries loves to change narratives. They love to correct things. They love to control outcomes. And I know Aries hates that, but it's true. It's true about Aries. They love to take control of certain things, and if they can help where they can, they'll sometimes force it to happen. And that Cancer and Mars doesn't really help that part of her. If we look at her Tumblr posts here, this is a lot of planets combining Aries, Mercury, Cancer, Mars, and her Gemini, Venus as well. And it says, I'm in such a state that the tiniest things are setting me off and making me snap at people out of frustration. I'm just trying to speak English to them. And it's as though they think I'm speaking Hungarian. It's upsetting to find out that if you care enough for a person and see them in need, they don't want your help, and they get angry if you do help. Having depression seems to mean that you've lost the ability to even help someone else in trouble. I don't want to end up bitter and resentful and angry at everyone. Why do we think we know everything when you're just 14? Why do you stop growing when you turn 25? These are things, again, a combination, a mixture of her planetary signs working together and having that conflict with her perspectives on inner self and outer self and society at the same time. So if we take a look at this square trifecta going on here, we see that Leo Jupiter in the 4th house and her Aquarius Saturn in the 10th house is square with her Taurus rising and her sun. And so it's the ascendant sign, both in Taurus. And so her larger goals were in competition with who she was as a person. On one side, she felt the need to be great, That's the Leo side talking. It was one of her life goals to travel, explore the world. On the other side, her Taurus rising sun had a challenging time letting go of comfort. So with her Aquarius Saturn, she felt a duty to change the world and help humanity through her greater experiences, which is the Leo, Jupiter in Leo. However, her Taurus energy was aggravated by her sense of freedom, so thereby restricting her, creating further friction in her energy, which we see a lot of in her Tumblr, this back and forth of who she is and what she's supposed to do. So her life purpose was a little skewed, but she was always trying to challenge herself with these experiences. And, unfortunately, that type of energy took her to where she ended up being. So she has another square aspect in the Mercury with the Capricorn Neptune. So Neptune and Capricorn in the 9th house of mental exploration, but it's also in a retrograde. This is further confirmation that her mentality and perspectives and the afterlife, her perspectives of the world and afterlife were skewed. So Neptune is the planet of illusions and imagination, belongs to Pisces. Mixed with the Mercury in the 12th house in Aries, she saw the world from an upside down perspective, meaning she was challenged to overcome conformity of society's expectations of her. But again, it would be very overwhelming for her because she wanted to lead with the new perspective for others to follow. And that's mostly due to her Saturn in Aquarius, of wanting to go against the norm. It's clear to me that she was truly a visionary, a very creative visionary. But a lot of times that was misunderstood by a lot of people. And we're seeing that a lot of her being very misunderstood. If we take a look at another Mercury square, which is in a square aspect with the midheaven, which is in Capricorn, we see that she has challenges with focus. She can be easily distracted. She can be very impulsive and at times extremely volatile when under somebody else's direction, right? She wants to lead herself. She wants to tell people who she is and where she's headed in life. She doesn't want somebody else dictating what she should or shouldn't be doing. And although she wanted to climb as high as she could in her lifetime, it'd be challenging for her to commit to any one direction without feeling flustered or frustrated when things don't happen very quickly. So this is somebody who wants to climb their golden mountain as fast as possible and really just, again, challenging themselves to be worthy of their own experiences, which I said earlier. She was an extremely loyal, family-oriented, and loving person because of her Taurus and Scorpio signs. And she was a little odd and awkward because of her Gemini Venus over here, but she was also very intelligent and a friendly person. She wanted to learn about the psychology of human behaviors, and that's why she noted so many observations, and she made so many mental notes for herself. It was clear in her Tumblr posts, she loved to travel, she was fearless, had amazing survival instincts, she could make home anywhere she wanted, she loved entertainment, and was unafraid to dream big goals, even if nobody else agreed, and this is what made her an amazing person. To me, all she really wanted was to have somebody that understood who she was as a person without the mental illness, and she had extremely high self-awareness. However, she was very hard on herself because there was just so much pressure to conform and be somebody else, which she wasn't. And I wish that I could have been her friend, man. I would have helped her. But, we can't change what happened. We don't know what happened. In the end of the day, we weren't there. And we weren't there to live through her trials and tribulations. And unfortunately, this happened because a lot of this mental illness, it went unchecked, and her not fully comprehending where all of this is stemming from. Now, I'm not saying that astrology can help us with this 100%. What I was trying to achieve here was to show you how astrology relates to her as a person. And it's really up to you to determine whether or not we can use astrology in the future for other people to spot these certain things in others and maybe get them the help that they truly need. Because I'm a strong believer that, a combination of different things can help, and astrology is just one of them. I don't think it could take over 100% and cure somebody, but it can sure as hell help them learn more about themselves so that they know what they're working with, what energy they're working with. You know what I mean? And if this natal chart is accurate, then she had multiple square aspects with her Mercury, which is in the 12th house of self-undoing, which we learned. And so I do believe that this was always, her mental health was always going to be a challenge for her. I also believe that she was a medium due to her Scorpio moon and 12th house aspects. That's a story for another time. I'm not trying to scare you guys or continue the speculation of her life. But, you know, I really do feel like there were spirits involved here in paranormal stuff. But, you know, again, not trying to build a conspiracy on that. But, you know, it's still out there. If you guys want to learn more about astrology, you can pick up my book, You Are More Than Just Your Sun Sign, on Amazon, out today. The ebook is coming out March 20th. And if not, that's cool too. You know, you could just, learn by yourself. I don't know. Other than that, just drop down in the comments what your thoughts and opinions are about the tragic case of Elisa Lam. Or if you guys want me to cover somebody else, then just leave it in the comments too, and I'll take a look at it later. See you guys next week. Bye.